Hi, I'm Dana, and I won't lie to you, this one might be a bit of a weird video because we're once again delving into quite a heavy topic, because that's just what I'm doing at the minute between fun little vlogs apparently. But I'm in a really good mood, so I'm gonna be in a good mood while talking about heavy shit. I'm not gonna be weird about it, I hope, but like, that's how it be. So if you're a regular on my channel, you'll know that back in February I moved out after having lived with a very abusive person for like 9 years at that point. We'd been in a relationship for 8 of those years, and then I'd broken up with him, and we had a year where I just didn't have anywhere to move out to, so I still lived with him, and it was fucking horrible. Even though we'd been broken up for a year, obviously I only moved out in February, so in a lot of ways I feel like I've only just started healing from having spent my entire adult life in an abusive relationship. It's a lot of fun, it's horrible, it's so fucking hard, and it's dealing with so much, and it doesn't feel fair a lot of the time, but that's not what we're getting into. What we are getting into is how I think that some of like sort of my autistic traits and the way I am as an autistic person sort of caused me to be somewhat of an easy target to an abuser, you know? I think that it's statistically a thing, I'm pretty sure from what I've read online, that a lot of autistic people, and it's one of those things where they aim it as like lots of autistic women end up in abusive relationships. And I think it's purely because they don't, there's not as much awareness and understanding, and men are less likely to like speak about abuse and the like. I don't think that it's a thing of like autistic women are more likely to be abused. I think that autistic people are more likely to be abused regardless of gender. It's one of those things, we're all different, but I think in general, due to our traits and the way that autism tends to represent itself and make us act and have us be, I think that we're a little more susceptible to it a lot of the time. I hope I explained that somewhat. I'm gonna close my window, I think it's a bit noisy. I hope you get what I mean. I swear I'm gonna explain other things in this video a hell of a lot better, okay? So getting into it, the first point is that I trust people way too quickly and way too much. And even though I'm aware of it, I still fucking do it. Because it's one of those things where if someone's nice to me, if someone shows like basic kindness to me and the people around me and the people around them in general, I very quickly start to just be like, that's a nice person, that's a good person, I like this person, I trust this person. And it's backfired many, many times in many, many ways. And even though I am much, much more aware of it now and know that I do it, it doesn't feel like it helps. Like, I feel like I'll put up walls with people and be like, I'm not going to trust this person until like they've given me reason to trust them. And I feel like it just means that I take a little longer to trust them. It might take like 6 months instead of 3 months or whatever, But eventually I'm still going to trust them. And it feels like a lot of the people I've come across have been very shitty, and they sort of wait for that trust. So it doesn't really matter how long it takes me to trust them. As soon as I do, they're like, okay, trust me now, I can do whatever. But in my desire to like and trust people, and especially to see the best in people and try to, generally, I want to believe the people around me are good people. And especially if I've like started some sort of friendship or relationship with someone, I want to believe that they're a good person. And I find it very easy to like overlook things to trust people, and especially to focus on certain things and be like, this is proof I can trust them, even if there's a whole stack of other reasons that I shouldn't trust them over here. There's this really one good reason, I will stick with that and be like, that's why I can trust them. And it's one of those things that can be a really, really nice trait when you meet good people, when they're nice people, when they are trustworthy people that you should trust and like feel good about. But when they're not, it fucking sucks. And the next big one, all of these are things that I think can be good traits, and they just get sort of used against us. And one of the really, really big ones for me is lack of knowing what's considered normal. So because I didn't know what was normal, I could very easily either be convince myself, or just assume that whatever was going on was normal. And especially I think a lot of my idea of what's normal in a relationship came from like TV shows and movies. So it took me a long time to think about the fact that I was staying at home cleaning up after this man and doing his washing and doing his fucking dishes and cooking for him and buying the food and looking after it. Like, I did everything for this guy. He went out to work and paid for things. I did every scrap of like physical and emotional labour in the relationship, in the house, like all of it. And I kind of just thought that was normal. I was sort of just like, that's what you do in a relationship, because like he doesn't know how to do these things. And that was a big one, as well as that I assumed it was normal for like a full grown man. This dude was 5 years older than I was. I assumed it was normal that he like didn't know how to do a load of laundry without like breaking the fucking washing machine. I thought it was normal that he didn't know how to wash dishes without leaving loads of them dirty, you know? It was my first relationship, and I just thought it was normal. He told me it was normal, so I just assumed that it was. His mother acted like it was normal because he was, you know the type, you know them. So I just assumed lots and lots of things within the relationship, right down to like him not sticking up for me, my friends absolutely hating him. They were all things I just assumed were normal parts of a relationship. And one of the big things that had me staying and made the relationship last so long was literal thinking around abuse. I had so many times across that relationship where people would pull me to one side, friends, medical professionals, people in the job centre, like so many different types of people would pull me to one side and be like, it seems like you're in an abusive relationship. It seems like this man's abusing you in some way. This man seems abusive. And I'd be like, no, not at all. He's never hit me. You know? Sorry, I ran out of storage there, so I've had to stop and come back in, and it's a bit disjointed. This keeps happening, I do apologise. But I was talking about literal thinking around abuse, because people had pulled me to one side and like, it seems like you're being abused. And I was like, no, he's never ever hit me. That doesn't happen. He doesn't abuse me. And you know, once I started to like see more discussion around what abuse is, especially emotional abuse and like manipulation and gaslighting and all those types of things, I realised there was a lot of stuff that he did that was very, very abusive. And because it wasn't put across in the way that was like literal and obvious to me, I just completely missed it. You know, like for years I knew that a sign of abuse was they'll isolate you and cut you off from friends and family. Not once did I think that the way that my partner at the time was like initiating arguments between me and my friends and me and my family, I never considered that to be isolating me from them, but he fucking managed it. Like, I'll give that cutting off my family had been coming for a very, very, very long time, and I think it was like always going to happen regardless of who I was with or whatever else. But he was so encouraging of me not talking to my family for so long. And it wasn't because he fucking cared about me. It was because it meant that I then wouldn't have had anyone but him, frankly. You know, at that point, he had already managed to make, like my best friend when I met him was this guy called Joe. And we'd been like through thick and thin together kind of thing. Like, he had lived at my house at multiple points. Like, he was my best friend. And very quickly, my boyfriend at the time gave away that he didn't like him. He didn't like this guy. And I was like, why? Joe's fucking solid. I've known this guy for years. He's my best friend. Oh, but look at how he talks to you. Look at the way he does this. Look at the way he does this. Oh, actually, this is really dodgy and this is a really bad side of him. And he, you know, this is every single day across weeks and weeks and weeks from someone that I'm in love with. So eventually I was like, yo, like, he is a bit dodgy. He is a bit this. He is a bit that. And very quickly, I went off him and we started arguing. And it's one of those things where, like, it was me. It was entirely my fault. I did that. But it was because I was being abused and manipulated. But at no point, like, up until, like, literally, like, after I'd moved out and completely, like, gotten out of that situation, did I realise, like, oh, he had isolated me from my friends there. Every argument that I had with my friends, like, at any point while I was with him, came around because I'd be like, oh, I'm not that happy about this thing. And it couldn't just be a thing that I wasn't happy about or a thing that was a bit crappy. It was the worst thing in the world, and I should stop talking to that person because of that, because oh my god, how dare they do that to me. You know, it was this validation of like, oh, he cares about me so much that like he's angry with me and he thinks I deserve better. But it was just a way to get me to not talk to anyone but him. And I've gone quite deep in on that example, but there was a lot where I'd hear like, this is a sign of abuse and this is abuse. And it just didn't connect to me that that was what was happening to me, or that was this thing that he'd done, because literal thinking. And I did mention it like sort of within that, but I think gaslighting as well is like, for me at least, something that like I'm especially sort of susceptible to, because I question myself all the time. You know, like as an autistic person, I grew up being like constantly questioned on like, why are you doing it like that? Why are you doing this? Stop doing that. Like, I was taught from a very early age that things about me were weird and that I needed to be like told what was right and needed to be like reminded this and reminded that, and you like I did everything wrong kind of thing. So it's really not that like difficult to convince me of something else, you know. And especially once I'd found out I was autistic, I still really struggle with the idea of like any social interaction, anything that goes wrong frankly in my life must be my fault because I've misread it in some way or not taken it properly, or otherwise just like been autistic and missed what's actually going on. So it's very, very easy to convince me in any situation that's what's happened. So like, I don't remember going on a date with my ex that didn't end with me getting upset about something he'd done or something he'd said, and him convincing me that like he hadn't actually done anything and it was just me being oversensitive, overreactive, being silly, like whatever else, you know. And that played into lots of things. Like if I'd asked him to do something and he hadn't done it, I obviously hadn't asked him to do it. I just never brought it up. And he it's one of those where I keep restraining myself, but I'm sort of wondering why, because he was an abusive asshole. So like that continued even after I'd moved out, because the night before I moved out was one of the worst nights of my whole entire life. It was absolutely horrible. He just screamed at me for absolutely hours about everything ever, tore me apart in every way he possibly could, and it was absolutely horrible. He absolutely disgusted me. I didn't know he could sink that low, quite frankly. So on the day that I was like moving all my stuff, I obviously forgot a lot of stuff because I'd barely slept the night before, because I wasn't too sure he wasn't going to come in and try to like fucking smother me or something. Like I really was terrified. So like I'm laughing because otherwise I'd fucking cry. It was horrible. Like it was really fucking traumatic and it was really awful. So obviously I forgot loads of stuff. And one of the things that I forgot was my utensils pot, you know, just like the pot that you have next to your oven that's got like wooden spoons and stuff in it. This was a utensils pot that said køkkenting in Danish on it, because we'd gotten it as a family when we lived in Denmark. My parents had bought it, and it had a bunch of my dad's utensils in it, which had come from my grandparents. And one of them was this wooden spoon with like a ceramic cupcake on the end, and my dad had only ever used it to bake this like certain kind of cake. It was extremely sentimental stuff. Like I don't know how I forgot it, and I'm really fucking kicking myself for forgetting it, but I did. And he binned it. He just fucking binned it. I asked for it back like a few weeks later, and he was like, no, I've put it in the bin. And I was obviously really, really upset. And I told him as much, and he was like, well, you never told me that. And that was where I got really angry, because like, I assure you, at some point in the last 9 years, I mentioned that the cooking utensils I use every single day belonged to my dead dad. I mentioned that. It's like that was the moment for me that I was like, yo, all that other stuff that he convinced me wasn't his fault or was actually my fault or actually happened like this, I was right. I was right the entire time. And I've obviously gotten quite angry and frustrated about that fact. I'm quite angry and frustrated about the entire fucking relationship. But it's so frustrating to feel like not only was I sort of taken advantage of for like, you know, nearly a decade, it's just taking advantage of me being autistic. It was taking advantage of me having a low self-esteem. It was taking advantage of me having constantly been made to feel like I'm the wrong one, that I'm in the wrong, that I've done the wrong thing. It just took advantage of so many things that it shouldn't have, and it was really fucking unfair and really crappy. So yeah, there are reasons that I think that a lot of autistic people are probably more susceptible to being abused, and reasons that I was in an abusive relationship for near on a fucking decade. There's probably going to be more content like this, to be honest, because as I said, I kind of feel like I'm only just processing and healing and starting to like deal with it all. And it's fucking tough and it's kind of horrible, and I need somewhere to get it out, and also some way to maintain a sort of like upbeat, this can help somebody type of thing, because like if I just sit with all of this, I'm gonna feel fucking awful. Whereas if I put it out into the world and talk about it, you know, someone else might not end up in an abusive relationship and might get out of one a lot sooner than I did, or, you know, might even fucking get out of one way fucking later than I did, because it's about time if you're in that situation and you can do it. It just... Similarly to all of the autism content, I just need this horrible thing to help somebody else, you know? Like, it can't just be my horrible thing forever, please. So yeah, that's the video. If you enjoy my content and want more of it, you can obviously subscribe, but you can also become a YouTube member and get my fun little foot mushroom guy next to your name, and you can become a Patreon subscriber. After I'm done with this video, I'm going to do a voiceover for a Patreon only video, because there's... See, I initially was like, no, there's not going to be any extra content. You're going to get different content and early content, but I don't want to provide extra content. But I think sometimes I will, but only of like boring stuff that I don't want to put on YouTube. So I'm going to be doing a voiceover for a video about how I make my thumbnails now. I've just changed how I make my thumbnails. I think they look a lot better. I hope you agree. So yeah, that's a whole thing. I am consistently working on this and trying to make my videos better, trying to make my channel better. So yeah, it'd be really lovely if you want to stick around, and if you wanted to contribute monetarily. There's memberships and Patreon, and also a link to my Ko-fi will be down below. If you wanted to donate a coffee, you can donate more than a coffee. You can I think you can donate less than a coffee. Any little helps. Like, I'm a broke ass bitch. If you send me £2, I'm like, oh my god, I can afford a chocolate bar. So like, if you want to, it's there. You don't have to. There's no pressure. It's all chill. Everything's fine. I like to provide content for free, but it's real nice if you fancy paying me for the work I do, frankly. Even though YouTube should be, it's not on you. We are in a capitalist society and nothing's on the individual. It's not your fault. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning. No, wait. You can also follow me on TikTok, where I'm actually posting quite a lot of TikToks and really enjoying like short form content over there. And you can also follow me on Instagram, where I post fun little pictures and life updates. And on Twitter, where I don't really post much of anything, but occasionally retweet fun things. So whoever you are and wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I'll see you again in a couple of days.